And just knowing like he really was not given a chance. He wasn't religious. So going to AA was so difficult for him, which is why I love the idea of Recovery Demystified. And ever since I heard about y'all, I was like, this could have helped him.
Hello, welcome to Recovery Demystified, a show where we explore our relationship to substances from a radical, non-religious, and empowering lens. Our sobriety is not a purity contract. It is an invitation to become curious about ourselves and find our own unique paths to growth and healing. If you've been questioning the role of alcohol or drugs in your life and haven't found the resources that you need, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello. Welcome back to Recovery Demystified. My name's Early. I'm so happy to have y'all here today. Today, I've got another interview episode. It is with Sierra, and I'm so grateful that she came on to tell her story. It's one of those that has a lot of complexity and nuance to it. And a lot of times I feel like the stories that we hear on recovery podcasts are the typical crash and burn story where it's very obvious the person has a severe addiction and then they move on to be completely abstinent from substances. And although those stories are like obviously very valid and important, I'm really interested in hearing stories of people that employ harm reduction in their lives or people that perhaps don't have that epic crash and burn story. And I'm sure you've heard me say it over and over that you don't have to hit rock bottom before you address your use of substances. If you're experiencing negative repercussions in your life, like, you know, we don't have to compare ourselves to other people. Like, it can always get worse. So Sierra's story is really interesting because she doesn't even identify as having had an addiction or being in recovery, but she had this experience with substances beginning with her mother in childhood and then later on dating someone that had pretty severe substance use issues. And then she got to a point where she was questioning her use of substances as well. So it's a lifetime that's like characterized by this close contact with difficult relationship with substances. And I find it like so fucking interesting that she is like, oh no, I never really had an addiction. I'm also not in recovery, but yet, you know, the story is still like super valid and really important. And I think that those people often get invisibilized in recovery spaces because of the concept that you have to have a very severe addiction to warrant that type of internal self-exploration. I'm also really grateful for her because she talks openly about having BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. And this mental health issue is like pretty highly stigmatized. There's oftentimes a lot of shame surrounding it. And I think that that is total bullshit. And I'm super appreciative that she was like really open with talking about those issues. So thank you, Sierra, for your time and your very candid energy on that. And of course, if this episode helps you at all, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. Go ahead and give us a 5-star rating and a review. All of that stuff helps us reach a larger audience. And share this episode with a friend who you think might need to hear this message today. And we have a Patreon. If you're able to contribute monetarily, that would be super helpful because then we can keep this podcast ad-free, which is really important to me because I find it extremely fucking annoying when a podcast is full of ads. So yeah, if you're able to, the lowest tier on there is $3. And we also have a merch store, and the link for all of that stuff is down in the show notes. Without further ado, here is my interview with Sierra. Hello, Sierra. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Will you start by introducing yourself to the audience? Let them know your pronouns and just a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So my name is Sierra Jeans. I go by she, her. I don't really care that much, honestly, though. I am 23 years old, and I live here in Northwest Arkansas.
Cool, yeah. And we actually met each other because our groups work together. Sierra works for a group called End Overdose, and they help us out with our harm reduction supplies, and it's been a really cool partnership. So, hell yeah. Glad to have you on. We're here to talk to you today about your story in your life with addiction and recovery. So I'm curious what it was like for you to be a little kid, maybe some of your first encounters with substances, and then how things progressed from there when they got bad, and then where you're at today. So yeah, just start wherever you'd like.
Okay. Well, first things first, I am adopted. So my biological mom, struggled with addiction to this day. So I grew up around just a lot of chaos till I was about 5, almost 6. I don't remember necessarily seeing anyone under the influence or just situations like that. I just know I grew up very, very unstable. No parental, like I would walk about a mile away from my house at the age of 4, and there was just no supervision, nothing like that. I've heard secondhand stories of things that happened that I just don't remember. But I grew up pure chaos. And then I was adopted actually by family members when I was almost 6 years old. And then we went straight from no structure, chaos, no supervision, nothing like that, to very, very strict, rigid rules. The family I was adopted by did not condone any use of any substance. I grew up in church in a very, I would go as far as to kind of call it a cult. Very Christian, conservative. I had a school that I went to kindergarten through my senior year, as well as an internship they encouraged you to go to instead of college. They had 2 summer camps, and the church, you basically got a discount to go to this school if you went to the church. So very, very sheltered bubble. So I went from kind of pure chaos to a lot safer of an environment, but it was very just growing up. It wasn't outright said, but it was definitely implied, like addiction is a moral failing. And I'm still in contact with my biological mom, so I kind of grew up with the idea of my mom had too weak of character to take care of me, or she chose drugs over me or chose that lifestyle, and really kind of grew up wanting a relationship with her, but being very angry because I just didn't understand the reality of the situation. So it honestly took till college and going through a lot of trial and error to actually understand nuance. Anything besides black and white, that's my biggest struggle to this day, is everything was all good or all bad. There was never a middle ground. There was never any color to anything. There was no empathy. It was just, you do this, it's a sin. So that's kind of how I grew up viewing substance use. So I didn't even drink till I was 19 years old. Not even my parents gave me a beer. No, they didn't drink. So I didn't sneak around. I didn't do anything. Oh my gosh.
We're turning our phones off.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I can edit it.
I turn it off completely. He has emergency bypass, so that's why that happened.
Oh my gosh. Is it an emergency?
Austin Powers. No,
okay.
He's moving right now.
Okay.
So sorry.
It's okay.
Where do I need to?
It's okay. I'm curious, was your mother a single parent? Like, where was your father?
So she actually had me when she was 19 years old, and my dad, I've never met him. I've seen pictures. He's about 20 years older than her. So a little bit of a abusive power situation there. I've never met him. He does know I exist. I don't really care to meet him, if we're going to be completely honest. It hasn't really bothered me that I don't know him. But she's also disabled. So she was born with a very severe version of spina bifida. So essentially, and this is maybe not fully medically correct, you're born with a hole in your spine. And so she was never supposed to be able to walk, have any control, live independently, and she just was able to have enough surgeries. Her parents really pushed for her to be able to live as independent as possible. So that definitely had a role to play in just the neglect growing up, things like that. So she was a single parent. My grandma, so her mom, was typically the breadwinner. My mom didn't work that much, even though she could. So my grandma was actually a traveling welder, so she would just be out of town most of the time. But that's how we afforded to live. So
what was your mom addicted to?
I can't ever really get a straight answer out of her. She has described it to me as she's basically tried everything she could get her hands on. And it was more or less just like really poor decision making when it came to substances. Instead, I'm sure she's had actual addiction to certain substances. It's just one of those things that I don't really know if I'm comfortable fully asking, but more just prioritizing, I guess, the rush in general over, just responsibility is kind of how I viewed it my whole life. We are on speaking terms now, so I have her on Facebook Messenger. So we do talk a lot. I haven't seen her in a long time, but I haven't ventured that far into it just yet.
Yeah. Do you remember what it felt like when you were a little kid living with her? And like you were describing not having a lot or like any supervision, like do you remember what it felt like?
From an emotional standpoint?
Yeah.
I felt very abandoned. Like, I remember coming home, I would just kind of roam all over the neighborhood. And I remember coming home and she wasn't there and, like, freaking out. Like, the neighbors came over, I was crying so loud. It was just, I never knew if she was going to be asleep when she was home, if she was going to be, I do remember occasionally her being high, maybe. She was going to be high when she was home, if she was just going to be watching TV. Like, there was no care. It was more of like maybe like an older sister relationship rather than a mom. So I loved her very deeply, but it was never I made my own meals, things like that. So it was just I became very independent from a very young age. And I've always been a very resilient kid, so I don't think I thought too much of it. I mean, I was very fearful of being left alone and things like that. But outside of that, it was kind of my norm. I didn't really know any other way to view it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's what I hear from a lot of people that go through environments when they're little kids with that, like, objectively, like, from an adult standpoint, when you're looking back on it, you're like, that was fucked up.
Yeah.
But then, like, sure. Most people, like, when they're a kid, they're like, oh, that's just normal. And it's just really interesting to think about how resilient, like, little kids' brains are and how they can adapt and change to stuff to just, like, prioritize their own survival when their caregivers aren't able to care for them, like, even remotely close to how they need. So,
yeah, 1,000%. It's always weird looking back. My degree ended up being in human development and family science, so I learned a lot about ACEs and, you know, just how kids' brains develop and how they react to certain things. And then looking back, I was like, oh, wow, that was a lot more messed up than I ever really thought it was.
Yeah, I recently started in the past few years learning about ACEs, which I guess if folks haven't heard of that, it's adverse childhood experiences. And it's a list of 10 different sort of like horribly fucked up things that possibly might have happened to you when you were a kid. And it's like, it's not an exhaustive list. Like, there's a lot of things that are missing from there, like sort of like systemic racism and things of that nature. But there's like decades of very good scientific studies pointing towards people's ACEs scores changing drastically increasing their likelihood to develop an addiction and drastically increasing their likelihood to develop like all sorts of different health problems. It's really interesting stuff. What family members adopted you and like what spurred that process?
Yes. So my grandma that we were just talking about, she got into a motorcycle accident and ended up passing away due to injuries. So her brother and his wife. So it gets kind of confusing because I call them mom and dad now, but it would be my great aunt and great uncle adopted me, and they already had 2 kids. So I now refer to them as my siblings. So I have 2 older brothers. One is about 7 years older than me. One is 3.5. So we're all exactly 3.5 years apart, oddly enough. We were very, very close growing up. So.
And do you remember how it felt to get moved into that new house and have all the structural changes?
Yes, it was very hard to adjust to, and it actually happened in a really weird way. The goal was never to adopt me. It was to get temporary custody, give my mom some time to grieve because she was 24, maybe 25, and her mom had just passed away. So to give her enough time to kind of figure out her own stuff, grieve, not have to take care of a kid. I mean, I can't imagine. I'm 23. I cannot imagine having a kid right now, let alone my mom dying. And so the goal, I lived in Louisiana, so the goal was to get her moved to Hot Springs, where I ended up growing up. And she just never really got it together enough to do that. So over the course of about 6 months, it turned into potentially looking at adoption, and about a year is when they decided to adopt me. So I was adopted the day after I turned 7.
Do you remember that time frame of your life?
Yes. Yeah. They sat me down on my birthday, on my 7th birthday, and they're like, how do you feel about calling us mom and dad? And I was like, that's weird. How would how would my siblings feel about that? Just because when I first came to live there, they were a little territorial. We joke about it now. I mean, I can't imagine being in that situation because we're all so close now, but they were not the they were not the nicest when all that started. So I was like, I don't really know how they'd feel about that. And it was just weird. And I kind of couldn't believe that my biological mom agreed to that. And so it was just kind of more shocked. But I was just excited. I had done so much better just in general. I got to go to school. I got to actually make friends. I got to have consistent meals. Like that was it. Food's always been a big thing for me. Like I was making my own meals at like 4, which consisted of like microwaved eggs, or ramen was fancy for me. So like meals 3 times a day, crazy. Being able to go to, even then, like church for me was fun just because I got to see people and I had clean clothes and, you know, all the things that we kind of think as basic human needs, necessities. I didn't have that before. So I was excited, but I was a little sad. I don't think I think I understood it, but not entirely. And so I didn't put too much thought into it. I was honestly more concerned about how my siblings would feel about it.
Yeah. Did it end up feeling like your family at some point, or did it always sort of feel not quite right? I
think it helped that I'm related to most of them. So they are biologically my second cousins. And so I think that helped a lot because we all sound similar. Genetics, nature versus nurture is so weird. We all sound very similar. Our mannerisms have always been very similar. So that kind of helped. I kind of always felt a little left out Just a little bit because, we were in a really big church community. So we'd have people over all the time, or interns that we would quote unquote host. And so they would tell stories of like my siblings when they were kids and stuff like that. And I didn't really get those stories either. I was also kind of I use this term very loosely because I'm very aware that I wasn't now as an adult, but I was like the problem child. AKA, I had mental health issues that I never got to go to therapy for, and a lot of abuse is happening before I was adopted and then by my adoptive father after. And so when you're in a high control religion, it tends to be everything's a sin. Any symptom of mental illness can be viewed as rebellion or, all sorts of other things. So it was never addressed. It was just more, how can we kind of punish the sin out of you? And so that is when I really started feeling left out because I wasn't a bad kid. I mean, I wasn't, like I said, I didn't drink till I was 19. I didn't even smoke weed for the first time till I had my medical card. Like I was a little goody two shoes. So that definitely had a big impact.
Yeah, that makes sense. And a lot of times kids that have like that early childhood trauma end up with like severe behavioral issues and they'll get like punished or medicated out of them. And yeah, there's a lot of that. And I feel like kids need more compassion and less punishment. Yes. So
I have a lot of grace for my mom because she had no idea what she was doing, especially when you grow up in that environment like she did. Like that's all she knew. But definitely looking back, I'm like, oh, wow. a lot of reflecting the past few years of that was a lot.
Yeah. So at what point did you first become aware that like mind-altering substances exist?
Yeah. So like I said, very small Christian school. So we didn't have like the DARE program or anything. So no prevention programs, nothing like that. We were just taught like everything we were taught was Bible-based or scriptures behind it. And I don't know if you've seen She's the Man, but this is like one of my favorite quotes. The best way to not is to not is kind of what we were taught about everything. Drugs, sex, anything like that is the best way is abstinence. Just don't do it because you're going to die. Like it was very dramatic. So I think we first learned about drugs in like the 9th grade and I knew what they were, especially there was a lot of conversations my mom tried to have with me, my adoptive mom, tried to have with me growing up about why I was adopted or kind of what my biological mom was doing. So I was aware. I did not know quite the scope and I wasn't really ever interested. Once again, very goody two shoes. But yeah, we had very base level knowledge of like, this is marijuana, this is why, this is whatever, this is alcohol. And I had friends who had parents who drank and stuff like that, but we did not. So it was just very like out of sight, out of mind.
Did anyone else in your school or your friend group like drink or smoke weed or anything when you were younger?
1,000%. Yeah. I was just very naive. So I didn't learn this till we were all talking like 2 years after I graduated. I was like, whoa, y'all were doing all that? My mom worked at the school, so they didn't want to get in trouble. So I was kept out of the know of most things.
I see.
Yes.
Yeah. So you said you were 19 the first time you drank. What happened there?
Yeah. So basically, I actually moved up here from Hot Springs for a summer just to get away. A lot of family drama. Moved back to finish my associate's degree, which was in addiction studies. I really wanted to help people. I had no understanding of what that looked like. Very honestly, looking back, probably white savior complex of, you know how that goes. So good intentions, not the right execution. And so I ended up moving back and I was just kind of realizing that I had grown up in a very high control environment and I never had a teenage phase. So I guess my teenage phase was when I was 8, supposed to be a young adult and learning how to adult. So I moved back. I lived in the dorms at a community college, which is an odd statement, in Hot Springs. I stopped going to that church and was like, I want to be normal and have normal experiences. And I was curious about drinking because I wasn't opposed to it necessarily. I just didn't know. So my older brother, actually my oldest brother, was like, if you're going to drink, it's going to be with me. Not going to do anything stupid. I'm quite known for impulsive decisions. So actually on Thanksgiving, we skipped our family Thanksgiving because family drama and we're day drinking. And honestly, it was a good experience because I got to learn this is what it feels like. This is why I may want to be more aware of my surroundings before I drink. And honestly, a very healthy first experience. Kind of same thing with weed. I was diagnosed lots of mental health problems. So the year before, I was misdiagnosed of bipolar. It is actually borderline personality disorder, we've learned, and quite a few other things. And I was on very heavy duty, lithium, Lamictal, that was like their first resort, not anything easier on me. And all of a sudden I got dropped by Medicaid. So I was like, I got to figure something out. So getting my medical card was my first thought. And that's had a couple of terrifying first experiences.
With smoking weed?
Yes. I am... Obviously, this is just recording. You can't see me. I'm a very uptight person, even if you look at the way I'm sitting. I'm very uptight. I still struggle with, like, the black and white thinking. I'm very like, everything to me is such a big deal. So we can assume that smoking weed for the first few times just resulted in really big panic attacks. It ended up helping in the long run.
Oh, shit, the first time you smoked it gave you more anxiety. It didn't relieve it?
No. I had no idea what I was doing, and I was so scared to, like, tell someone because I grew up where drugs was very stigmatized. Like, any substance was very, you just don't do it. So trying to figure out who to ask was just, it was more embarrassing to ask than to just figure it out. Like,
did you smoke weed or did you, like, do an edible?
It was an edible, so we learned very quickly a full edible maybe was not the best first. I was alone, which is also probably not an amazing idea.
Oh, no, what
so
happened?
It's kind of funny looking back. I was just kind of losing it. I was sitting there and, your heart rate goes up. So I was like, okay, and I have heart issues. So I was freaking out over that. And I was like, well, is this the feeling? Like, and then it just kept going and kept, because you know how edibles hit. It takes a while and you're like, is this even going to work? And then all of a sudden you're blasted. And so I was just kind of freaking out and was scared I was having a heart attack, and I probably greened out a little bit because I had never done it before, so I didn't know what I was doing. And so it was just more, I was alone and I was too scared. It was just, I knew it was embarrassing because I did have friends who smoked. And so I was like, oh, they're going to laugh so hard at this. So I just thugged it out for the next few hours. I was like, okay, we're going to try again, smaller, and maybe ask next time. So that's what we did.
Oh, no. But even after freaking out and having a panic attack, why did you want to try it again?
Because I knew if you could get a medical card for it, and specifically for PTSD, which is something else I was diagnosed with, I was like, it has to help. I must be doing something wrong. And I kind of was. This is why I'm a big fan of harm reduction and informed consent now. Even on small skills like that, like, it's so important to know what you're doing and not just, oh, this is bad, so this is why you don't do it. But, like, here are all the risks. Here's the safest way to do this. And not isolating yourself just because you're embarrassed about decisions, which that's, like, very low level. Like, we've learned that lesson on a lot bigger scale since then. But yes, so I was just like, it has to work somehow. And it did. It ended up helping for a long time. I no longer smoke because now I just get anxiety. But
me too. What was the magic equation? Like, what worked about it and how long did it work for?
Honestly, I don't remember. I couldn't tell you what exactly just, like, made it click, but it did. And I used it for about 2 years just because I've also learned I'm allergic to a lot of psychiatric medications, which my body just doesn't react well to substances in general, which is probably what has saved me fully from addiction. It obviously runs in my family. I've even, uncles and grandparents, I've heard their stories and all that. And I think at the end of the day, kind of what saved me overall, and we'll talk about it, but like dabbling and all these different things, it's just my body doesn't react well. So it worked for a couple years. I was just able to chill out. It helped a lot with anxiety. I didn't necessarily feel dependent on it. It was just if I'm a little anxious, it helped me, moved on. It wasn't that,
And why'd you stop using it?
I decided to take a break because my tolerance was pretty high, and that gets kind of expensive. And I forgot I had taken said break about a week later and went back to smoking as much as I normally would and ended up very, very sick. And ever since then, I just get panic attacks. So,
yes, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I've heard this story a bunch of times too, where it's like weed worked really well until all of a sudden one day you just get anxiety. And that's exactly what happened to me. It was like I smoked weed all throughout high school and it was the best. And then one day, I actually had a bad mushroom trip. And then after that, every time I smoked weed, it was like the only result of weed now is anxiety. And that's it.
I do think that had a part to play. I did have a very bad trip right before. I totally forgot about that.
Interesting. What happened there?
Yeah. So I'll kind of talk. This involves someone else, a lot of why I do what I do. So when I did move back to Hot Springs and, started drinking for the first time and kind of just experimenting and just being a normal person, honestly, I met someone that I ended up moving back up here with. And he was a lot more free-spirited and didn't care and just wanted to try everything than I was. So we balanced each other out for a while until we didn't. But I ended up drinking. Well, yeah, we'll just start with kind of how all this started. We lived in Bentonville, so he worked at kind of a more bougie restaurant. Had a lot of cocktail recipes from the restaurant, so he would kind of come home. We were not 21 yet. We were both like 20. He'd come home. He had a fake, so he would come home with like an idea, and so he would go get the stuff. I was way too terrified to ever have a fake ID, so he'd go get whatever to make this cocktail. I'd make dinner, and it was kind of like a cute little, thing until it turned into, okay, we're drinking like, because it wasn't just a cocktail. It ended up finishing the bottle of whatever it was and drinking probably 5 nights a week. And since I grew up with only like pure chaos and seeing like the bad effects of any substance use into nothing and all of it's bad, and you kind of have a rebellious stage and you're like, well, if this isn't true, then nothing's true. When especially with religion, I had no idea, even having done some classes and had a degree or an associate's, which isn't much, but a degree in addiction studies. It's very different to see it happen. And so I was like, this is normal. Especially I was in college, so college age, that's what everyone's doing. Maybe not bougie cocktails, but heavily binge drinking, most days of the week. And so I was like, oh, this is normal. And that probably went on for a couple of years. I was very functional. I never had a physical dependence. I wasn't drinking before going into work. It was just way too much drinking. And so in the midst of all that, we met a friend that would go to festivals up here. And I was like, I've always wanted to go to a music festival, me and my little sheltered self. So I was like, let's do it. And I told her, I was like, I want to do some sort of psychedelic just to say I did it. It was very scary to me, and for some reason, their response after talking to a few people was mushrooms was the answer. Terrible idea. They were high. And my partner, my boyfriend at the time, was all about it. He was like, yeah, you need to get out of your shell. Like, he was very experimental. So I was like, okay, it's fine. They were hybrid lab-grown mushrooms that, after doing a lot of research, have very similar effects to toad venom.
Oh my gosh.
Which, if anyone listening doesn't really know, it's like a 5-minute trip that feels like it's, or 5 to 15 minutes, feels like it's almost years long, and it's like one of the most intense psychedelic trips you can really have. So combine that with an 8-hour shroom trip at a music festival in 100-degree heat, camping.
Nowhere safe to go.
Nowhere safe to go. After having, just gotten out of a lot of religious trauma and a lot of family trauma, and we all know how psychedelics tend to, kind of bring up stuff like that. And so that was terrible. And my idea the day after was, that must have been a me problem. I'm going to try it again, but at a lower dose.
Oh, no. You did with the weed.
Yes. Which that one didn't go quite as terrible. But my boyfriend at the time was actually trying acid when I was doing shrooms, so did not have that response. Had the exact same response as me the next day. So I was like, maybe that's not my thing. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mom, if you listen to this. She doesn't know any of this. The next day, we had kind of talked about, me and my boyfriend at the time had rules almost of like, these are things that make me uncomfortable because of how I grew up and how I heard about them. Like, I would just love to have conversations before just outgoing, trying random stuff. Also knowing that fentanyl is a very real thing. Didn't want anyone getting laced. I was always carrying Narcan. That's always been a big thing for me. Always carrying test strips or making sure someone knew how to get test strips. So I think in the same weekend, we ended up trying Molly, which, that was okay. It wasn't my favorite. Once again, my body just reacts very, very odd to most substances. So it wasn't my favorite.
Did you freak out?
I did not, actually. I was quite proud of myself. It just wasn't enjoyable to me. Like, most people want to dance or like it's the love drug. And, I did not have that response. I was just more like, okay, I want to go sit in my tent now and not talk to anyone. And so the appeal for a lot of these things weren't a thing for me. And my partner at the time was just having a blast. I was like, this could be a problem. And so we, continued. I ended up working at a homeless shelter right after this. So a lot of very up close, very hands-on experiences of people struggling with addiction, and especially mental illnesses and addiction at the same time. And it was around that same time I kind of was like, ooh, I'm drinking too much. Just kind of after seeing, real life consequences.
I have a question. Did the alcohol make you freak out at first, or did that have good effects?
No, that was fine. I was fine with that. It wasn't like I wanted it all the time. I just felt more, I have a very hard time. I have a lot of social anxiety. I'm just very anxious in general. So it kind of made me more social. I felt like I could just have normal conversations and not overthink everything. I also love music. So it was just really nice to listen to music or go to a show and, things like that.
Yeah. Are you neurodivergent too? Do you feel comfortable sharing that?
I have never been formally diagnosed, but basically how my psychiatrist put it is when you are this, I hate to say late in the game, but when you're this late in the game, when you don't catch it as a kid and you have a lot of trauma as a kid, borderline personality disorder and autism can have a lot of overlapping symptoms, and so it's kind of hard to accurately say which one it is. So a lot of neurodivergent traits. For sure. I have a lot of sensory issues. I have a lot of, just trouble with eye contact, or I've always been better at talking, as a kid, talking to adults rather than kids my age, a lot of things like that. But it is not something that they could formally be like, yeah, this is what it is. So
it's just interesting to me hearing about like you trying all of these different substances and the substances basically like
not
saying no, like, because a lot of times people with like childhood trauma or like attachment trauma from being kids or being on the spectrum or whatever it may be, when we try the substances, we get the like crazy euphoria thing that like people that grew up all healthy and shit didn't get.
Exactly.
So it's interesting.
I found it odd too, because a lot of my friends have had similar experiences and they're like, how do you not like it? I was like, I don't know. I did find something I liked though, which I guess we can kind of talk about that if that's okay.
Yeah. Where were we at in the story?
Oh yeah, I started working at a homeless shelter. So I just had a lot of very up close and personal of, oh, this is really what it can do, and I just need to watch myself a little bit more. And at the same time, I was living with my partner, and he, I had expressed how much we had been drinking, and we just weren't receiving consequences, I guess, of our actions. So it's like, oh, this isn't a problem. Until there just started a lot of blacking out, a lot of not being able to remember what was said, a lot of just emotionally abusive behavior, like very volatile emotions that were a lot harder for him to control. And that is kind of what scared me out of, I need to be able to be sober to handle these situations. And so that went a lot of back and forth of, hey, I think you need to take a break. He would agree. I would take a break with him to be supportive. And it would just go back and forth of, well, I don't think I need to take a break. And, okay, then compromising. Maybe we just don't do hard liquor. Maybe we just stick to beer and seltzer. A lot of back and forth. And it took me up until him just doing that consistently and not being able to get sober for me to realize like really what was going on. And I'm, like I said, big fan of harm reduction, big fan of meet people where they're at, but I just could not seem to get a handle of that in a relationship. It's, once again, very different having the knowledge versus living it. And so in the middle of all of that, we were still going to those festivals, and then we decided we'd try Coke one time. I was like, okay, a very big conversation. That was the one thing I liked. I felt like I could be social. I felt like I wasn't freaking out, which is odd, just given what we've already talked about. I wasn't freaking out. I was fine. I have since learned that the psychiatric meds that do work best on me are very similar to cocaine, so that explains a lot. But that ended up to make a long story short, turning into a lot of, this is just a festival thing, which turned into I randomly bought an 8-ball. You want to do it after work? And I was not telling any of my friends these. I just told them, no, I just do it at festivals, like whatnot, which turned into trying Molly again after work and just stuff like that, to the point of like, okay, this is really not healthy, especially combining substances, especially with what we were kind of already struggling with alcohol. And that's kind of was my wake-up call, like, oh gosh. And my biggest thing, I'm very anxious attachment. I've heard you talk a lot about attachments. I've listened to a few episodes. He was very avoidant. And so it was also I felt like I could fix the situation, especially how I grew up. And I was too scared to be alone. So I would just rather deal with whatever was happening than make sure I was healthy and safe, which turned into very off and on relationship. We dated for about 3 years. Very off and on, and to the point of I kind of started scaring my friends who did do coke at festivals or were the people that introduced me to these things. Started freaking them out because they're like, hey, you're doing this way too much. I already have heart issues, so that's a really big thing when doing any stimulant is your heart rate goes up way too high. Really freaking people out, and I never had a physical dependence, but it was just more of I was in college through all of this too and working full time, and it was like, this is my only bit of fun I get to have. I'm not destructive on it, and just more using it as a crutch of, hell, it did help me stay up late and get some homework done. It did help me socialize and things I was really struggling with.
Wait, and what was scaring your friends?
Just how often. I was always the friend that was like, that's a really bad idea. The mom friend, the responsible friend. And so now I was just like, we're randomly going out to the bar. Let's go buy something. And my friend was like, okay, I really want you to think about this. Like, I'm not even doing anything. And you are. Like, I love you. That is, you need to be careful. I was like, okay. And my wake-up call fully for all of that. I stopped. I stopped last year in January 2025. I was just like, this is stupid and kind of a waste of money. And I had just graduated college. So I was like, if I'm going to be an adult, I need to be an adult. And so thankfully, I know that's so privileged of me too, to be like, well, I know how addiction works, so that's why I get to experiment, especially knowing it runs in my family. Like, looking back, that was so dumb, and I'm just so incredibly lucky. So incredibly lucky. But I was just like, I'm gonna be done with this. Like, whatnot. Me and my boyfriend ended up breaking up permanently. It was just, he was not doing well mentally. He was really struggling. He could not stay sober, and I just couldn't, handle the consequences really of it anymore. Turned into a completely different person, which is why I'm such an advocate of like being empathetic now, and just knowing like drugs or alcohol doesn't make a person bad necessarily. Like, just because you use doesn't mean you're a bad person. Just because you use doesn't mean you're addicted. But like, just understanding that's somebody's kid at the end of the day, and that's what kept me in the relationship for so long, is just knowing he was also adopted about 3 days after me and lived very, very similar life. He grew up on the same road, and we didn't know until we met each other.
That's crazy.
Why? Right? And so I just had so much empathy towards that. And that's kind of what kept me in a potentially dangerous situation for so long. And finally, I was just like, he needs to figure it out. I can't fix it. Like, I've lived a very similar, I don't have to put myself through trauma anymore, for someone else.
And there's a difference, too, between like humanizing someone and having compassion and empathy for them, and then also like participating and allowing yourself to like be in a continuously abusive situation, that like having empathy doesn't mean you deserve to be abused.
Yeah. So remember earlier how I said everything was always black or white? There was never a So that is, we still struggle with that thought process. But finally I decided, I also was kind of having a mental breakdown because I realized I wanted to be a caseworker, like a social worker, and realized I couldn't handle it. It was way too much stress for me, and I always had a heart for it. So I was kind of having I just graduated. I worked so hard. I paid for my own school. I worked my entire way through school. I did not have parental help, and was typically working about 2 to 3 jobs each semester. So I was like, I don't know what to do with myself. I have nothing to do. I need to find a job, and I don't even want to do what I went to school for.
So what did you get hired as at first that you didn't enjoy doing?
It wasn't that I didn't enjoy it. It was when I was working at the homeless shelter. I loved it, and I was good at mentally compartmentalizing, but my body got the brunt of it. I get stress fevers, I learned. So every weekend when I was done with work, I would come home and have a fever all weekend and miss the first 2 days of the next week.
Wow.
And just couldn't. It was a lot. They're in a very dangerous environment, if nothing else, and that on top of school. And that's what made me realize, like, I have such a passion for this, but I actually cannot handle it.
And also maybe the compartmentalizing was stuffing it down.
Yeah. Oh, 1,000%. I intellectualize all of my feelings. I would love to give a shout out to EMDR therapy.
Hell yeah.
Because that has helped me so much. But yeah, no, when I was working at the shelters, when I got introduced to harm reduction fully, and I was like, oh, I love this. It was just so interesting to see, like, okay, real people need this. This does help people. Not everyone is ready to recover. And, that's okay. Like, wherever you are in that is okay. And I understand, like, I don't have a personal relationship with my biological mom, a close one. But I would love to know someone else is taking care of her, even if she's making decisions that hurt me. And I wanted to be that for other people. So I remember word for word saying to my mom, and I'm going to give a shout out to Northwest Arkansas Harm Reduction, because I volunteered a little bit for them. That's where I got introduced to it at all. I told my mom, like, okay, if I could have a dream job, it would be working for them, but they're just volunteer run, and like I have to make money because now I have student loans. Mm-hmm. And that night I went on LinkedIn. Don't know why my 3 a.m. mental breakdown was LinkedIn. And I found an overdose had just posted a role, and this was something I was super passionate about. And we are not as full spectrum as Northwest Arkansas Harm Reduction. We are purely overdose prevention and response. But I was like, this is perfect. I've lived with it. I have seen it. I have done it. I have helped other people. I have given other people naloxone or Narcan at the shelter, and it took like 2 months for them to get back to me, but I got the job. And that was kind of the end of it, except about 2 months later, my ex-boyfriend had died by suicide, and it was something that I was very aware of the potential of. Part of why I broke up, of like, I called his mom when we broke up. I was like, he's really not doing okay. I can't stay in it just so he's alive. And I was already talking to someone else at the time, which we are now dating and have been since then. But had no idea what to do. And then I figured out from his roommate that he had been telling me he was sober for the past 3 months, and I was super excited for him, and he was not. And in fact, he had developed a full-blown addiction to Coke, as well as, we already knew, some alcohol problems, was not showing up to work, was driving drunk, all sorts of things I had no idea about. So I decided to kind of go and attempt to give him, I guess, some dignity before his parents got there. If they knew what was going on, but maybe like all the alcohol bottles that I was assuming would be there, like they didn't need to see that before we just got his stuff, because we shared an apartment together. I hadn't been living with him for a year, but a lot of my stuff was still there. And going in and kind of like, you know, picking out what I would like to keep as, you know, just like a little memory of him. The amount of cocaine still in there that the cops just didn't get.
Oh my gosh.
Don't know how they missed it, or just paraphernalia or empty bags. The thing that got me was, you know, trying to organize his stuff for his parents and all that. Like, about $4,000 or $5,000 worth, I think, is what we ended up kind of calculating it to based off of the amount of bags we saw, and just being so heartbroken of like knowing that my decision making could have contributed to his addiction. Like, I just got lucky, but we grew up the exact same. Like, what was the difference in us? And that was kind of my wake up call of I never want to touch this stuff again. Just knowing how scary it was, and probably how scary it was for him. He ended up having probably, no one could tell you for sure, but probably like a drug-induced psychotic episode that lasted a few months, and that is part of why we broke up. And just like really understanding like the real life consequences and how, you know, for a lot of people, you know, no one chooses addiction. People just do it to escape, or they do it to have fun, or they, you know, whatever their reasoning is. And for me to just be so flippant about it and be like, well, I know better, so I'm not going to be addicted, is like so arrogant. And so that I think about it every day at work. You know, we talk about testing substances, we talk about using naloxone, and just doing it kind of for him, of knowing like I wanted him to be okay, and just knowing like everyone deserves that dignity. And that's kind of why I'm so passionate about it. I'm going back to school for prevention because, you know, he never really got much of a chance at life. He had a very rough childhood. He was not taught healthy coping, and he had access to substances. And that's typically how the story goes. And it's not a moral failing, and it's not a character flaw. And it took a lot of trial and error, kind of just back and forth between, like I said, very black or white thinking, all good or all bad, of like, no, this is fine, or no, this is terrible, to really kind of see the whole scope of the situation. And just why I'm so passionate. I've always been passionate about it since me and that boyfriend got together, about just being more empathetic and caring about other people, and, you know, not judging, stuff like that. But definitely ever since he passed away, it was about a year ago last week, it's honestly been just very fulfilling. Of he didn't die by overdose, but also knowing like my job every day helps people like him. It helps people of all walks of life. And that is kind of like how I got to where I was. And just seeing like growing up with absolutely no prevention education is such a bad idea. There's a very healthy way to do it. Dare may not be the answer, but not talking about it is also not the answer, because that could have saved his life had I known better too. You know, I got lucky, but that could have saved him. It could have helped out my friends, you know. And so that's kind of how I kind of got to be where I am now, of being just so passionate about it and wanting to go back to school and being involved in every way possible, because it is so important. And I want to give kids like him another chance. You know, kids that just really don't get it. He was homeschooled, so he also had any sort of prevention education. He was also Native American, which there is so many studies that show that they're very disproportionately affected by alcoholism. There's not a lot of resources that are very inclusive to maybe like the tribal side of things and how they handle substances. I have a lot to learn from them. I've done so much research since then, and just knowing like he really was not given a chance. He wasn't religious, so going to AA was so difficult for him, which is why I love the idea of Recovery Demystified. And ever since I heard about y'all, I was like, this could have helped him. It was so hard. He walked in, how are you 21 years old and you walk into AA for the first time? And it's a bunch of 50-year-old people talking about God. And you're not white, you're not a Christian, and you're barely old enough to buy alcohol. Like, what do you do? And so I understand. I understand exactly why he kept drinking, and I don't blame him. It's just he didn't get that chance. So I want to do everything I can and partner with as many people as possible to make sure people do get that chance, because I was stupid, I was arrogant, I was also really lucky. My only luck in life, honestly, is probably not being addicted to anything. But I want to spend kind of my privilege and the chance I've been given to help other people, because not everyone gets that.
Yeah. Damn. I'm so sorry about your loss with that. That's, suicide is like always so heavy, you know? Yeah. And there's a lot of thoughts of like, what could have I done? What could have I done to make this turn out different? Yeah. I'm thinking about Indigenous folks and the like ancestral trauma, the inherited trauma, the lack of resources, and the general lack of culturally appropriate like facilities for addiction resources, like whatsoever. Yeah, there's like a lot going on there. And I don't think it's arrogant that you're like, I'm going to try drugs. I'm not going to get addicted, because it's also like, it seems like also very biochemical with you. Like when you're describing using all these substances, and like, it seems like you really, you know, hit the cocaine pretty hard for a minute there, but you're not describing the like the super common thing that like is the
like it just clicking.
Yeah, the biochemical part that we can't control happening is like when you try a drug for the first time. And like the last guy I had on the show tried opiates for the first time, and he said it made his anxiety go away, his chronic pain go away, and it gave him euphoria, like all at once. And I was like, no fucking kidding, you're going to keep doing that. So it's like, yeah, it's not arrogant. It's just like, it's fucking biochemical at some point. You know what I mean? And it sounds like your ex had a very different like internal response. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I think that definitely contributed to me also not understanding of like, why can't you get sober for me? You know, brought up a lot of that trauma from my mom of like, why can't you do it for me? Yeah. Because I genuinely didn't understand. And now that, you know, I feel like you've unlocked something in my brain there of like, that makes a lot of sense. Because I didn't. I was like, it's just alcohol. Like, I get addiction, but I knew how it felt. And so it was like, it's not that deep. It was that deep, you know?
Yeah. And I'm curious, when you did decide to quit cocaine, what was your experience with that? Were you just like, I'm done, and you walked away? Or was there a struggle? Was there cravings? Like, what was the experience like?
I definitely wanted to continue. It was more socially enabled. So if I was with friends who did it, and one of my friends, the same friend who called me out, we love her, she decided I need to get sober from this. Like, I don't think this is a good idea for me. A little bit more of an intense situation. And it was like, she knew how to get it. At this point, I did too, but I'm very awkward. I'm very, very nervous type of person. So it was like, okay, do I want to put her in that situation to have to awkwardly go get it for me? And she's trying to, not do it. So it was just more like socially enabled. So I would say, I mean, still every once in a while, like, I'll be honest, because I still drink. I am very healthy about my drinking now. Maybe once a week, maybe more every once in a while, sometimes months without it. Like, it really just depends. And there have been times, like, I'm on Dixon, which if you're not from Arkansas, Dixon is like our bar street, and where all the college students go, and I just graduated college. So sometimes I'm there and I avoid certain bars because I know exactly who's hanging out there, or just randomly get the thought of, what would be really nice right now. So maybe more like mental rather than physical cravings, or, music festivals. If I'm there like that, I feel like I've Pavloved myself a little bit into wanting that when I'm at a music festival. So definitely it's still on my mind every once in a while. And it's still like, man, like, I wish that wasn't such a weird situation and I could just enjoy it. I'll also say another thing. My partner right now, he grew up with some interesting experiences with drugs with his family. So he's very cautious around it. And so I wouldn't want to make him uncomfortable. So it's just like it doesn't fit into my lifestyle now. It's just what I tell myself, not like you can't, or if you do it, you're going to get addicted, or like scaring myself out of it. But simply it doesn't fit the life I want for myself. And I saw where it could lead, not where it always leads, but I saw where it could lead, and why would I do that if I have the knowledge now?
So you do still get like occasional mental cravings, and you're able to just like rationalize your way out of it with like logic?
It's definitely that. Also, I love my job. Yeah. I love my job. And so I think I'm very much reminded of, I hate to put it like this, but maybe the dangers of it sometimes through my job and through the trainings that we do. So it's just kind of more just like rationalizing of like, I have fought so hard. Like, I haven't really been given the upper hand for a lot in life. I've had to fight very hard to even get a degree, to even get myself to this point, to be I've been independent basically since I was 17, like financially. And so I have fought too hard just to throw it away. And so that's kind of my thought process of not I can't, or I don't get to, and not necessarily of like gaslighting myself into thinking I don't want it. I I want the life I think I've created for myself a little bit more.
Yeah, that makes sense. How did your relationship with alcohol change? Because you had described with that ex-partner drinking like heavily 5 days a week, and now you said you just drink once in a while. Is it the same kind of deal, or what's your mental process with that?
I tried to stop drinking around him fully, like out of support for when he was trying to be sober or things like that. There were a few times we would still drink together if it was like one of those times where it was like, maybe just no hard liquor. Yeah, I mean, if you've lived it, you know the bargaining and trying to figure out what works for you. So honestly, I wasn't drinking around him anyway, and we lived together for a really long time. So I'd only drink around other friends if we decided to go out, and I had 2 full-time jobs and school. So it was like, when am I going to have the time, to go out with my friends? So it was kind of just a mixture of like happenstance and seeing what it was doing to him. And it scared me, to be honest. It was like talking to a completely different person. Even looking back at pictures of him when we first started talking, I mean, he was still drinking, probably too much in hindsight. And him towards the end of our relationship, like it's such a big change. And I think that scared me out of it, because it wasn't, once again, kind of just a chemical thing. It wasn't that I had a dependency on it. It was just that it was there. And I was like, well, if you're doing it, I'm going to do it. I don't want to be left out. So I think it got easier when he was trying to be sober, or in the moments he was sober. And now it's just kind of like I do watch myself very heavily, because I do think that out of anything has the most potential, for a problem. I don't think recovery is linear, and I don't think like your relationship with substances is ever linear. So I never want to be like, yeah, I'm past that part of my life. Like, I think if anything had the potential to be a problem, it would be alcohol. And so I watch myself of, am I wanting to drink when I'm sad? Terrible idea for me. Am I wanting to drink when I'm angry or when I'm stressed? Or am I drinking when I'm celebrating like big things? Like a friend got a new job or things like that. Like I try to be very intentional about why, when I go to buy something or when I'm thinking, oh, what sounds nice right now is like a beer. Like, okay, why? Because I do want to be very careful, because I've seen how slippery that slope is. And sometimes you're just there and you don't realize it. And I don't want to get to that point. So just a lot of, like I said, I intellectualize all my feelings, which is both good and bad, but it has helped me with substances of like, okay, why do I want to do this? So that's kind of my approach, which I understand definitely does not work for everyone, but I'm a very logical person.
Yeah, logic never played into the game for me. It was like, it's like logic would enter my brain, but the need to drink or do drugs or something was just so fucking overpowering. Like logic was not a useful tool.
Yes.
When you do drink, do you just have a few, or do you binge drink still, or like what's that look like?
Honestly, I would say sometimes I still do binge drink. I think I try to like rationalize it to myself, like if we're going to be honest, because Northwest Arkansas is basically one big college town. Fayetteville technically is, but anywhere. And I definitely, the thing in college is to black out, or how drunk can you get? And so I find myself having moments where I'm like, I just want to do what I did in college, or like, not care. So I attempt to not to every once in a while. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, that was way too much. Also, another weird like biological thing about me is I metabolize alcohol different every time. So my tolerance doesn't necessarily like get higher or anything like that. Sometimes one drink will have me super tipsy. Sometimes 3 drinks will do nothing. And it could be 2 days in a row. So like when I am drunk, I have to be very self-aware, and especially after just experiencing everything and that past relationship too, of like, I think there's been some trauma there of I'm very aware of my surroundings when I'm drunk. I'm very aware of how I'm acting when I'm drunk. So there's just a lot that goes into, I try not to let myself just binge drink.
Yeah, and then I guess I'm also interested in like if you're interested in sharing your experience with the mental health issues like the BPD. Was that worse when you were using substances? Like how does your life compare now with your mental health symptoms from then and now? That's good.
They influence each other. So I feel like on moments where I drink more, I am way more emotionally volatile. And some people like to say there's different like subtypes of BPD. I have quiet BPD, which is just a lot more internalized. So it takes a lot for me to finally have a big blowout for people to see. And so by emotionally volatile, I just mean like I am more emotional. I think when I was doing all that a lot more, absolutely. Because number one, it was to some degree causing problems in my life, whether it was in a relationship or someone got super paranoid because they tried this, and then or someone ruined the trip because they got blackout, just stuff like that. So the substances were directly affecting my life, which those things were kind of triggering me and making me have more symptoms. And then kind of the opposite of like, okay, what if something big did happen? Like, what if I got cheated on, for example? What was my first reaction? Probably get drunk, with the girls. Because society is like, yeah, you deserve a girls' night after something, So I think it was a lot of rationalizing, doing it, and then, yeah, they just both influence each other a lot. So I still notice myself if I have it managed decently well now. It used to be terrible in high school. Terrible. And so now I'm very aware, and I try to tell people the minute I feel like a shift. So not to like make them babysit me, but more of like, okay, make me talk through it. Like, why do I want to do this? Should you be drinking right now? Should you be driving right now? Like, maybe should I be... My big thing, I used to get upset and like go on drives. Like, I've built a community enough that knows me that they can kind of keep me in check when I may not be at the mental state to do that for myself. So,
is it the kind of thing where if you didn't bring it up immediately, it would just kind of like fester and grow? Yeah. And
I don't want, because it kind of just, like I said, it's very internalized. So you will see a change out of nowhere and be like, what in the world just happened? So I like to tell people the minute I feel anything kind of different of like, hey, just so you know, like, this is not a you problem, this is not whatever, but this is how I'm feeling. So
yeah, and we're here and we're connected and we love each other and we can support each other. So very cool. I know you had mentioned EMDR as well. Like, what kind of other like healthy coping skill kind of things have you done to heal yourself from all of that trauma you've been through?
Yeah. Educating myself a little bit more has helped because, like you said, especially when it comes to suicide, it's complicated. It is very nuanced, which I'm not good at, and there's a lot there. So just educating myself as much as possible so I don't have room to wonder about certain things. So maybe that's reading books about the subject if I'm not easily triggered by it. I mean, it varies from week to week. Another thing, getting off social media. Like, periodically, I'm not great at it, but I try to do it a lot. Helps so much because it's really easy to get yourself worked up about something or think about something that's triggering you or tempting you or whatever, however you want to word it, when it's in your face all the time. Getting off of social media, I have started working out a lot more, which I know is just like your stereotypical, but I feel things part of BPD specifically is feeling things very, very intensely. Almost like burning intensely. And so if I can do something intense to give that energy somewhere to go, so whether it's working out, or I take pole classes sometimes, so sometimes that's fun, or running, or just doing the most like random things for movement helps so much because it just tires me out where I can't really think about it anymore. So kind of think about a kid, bringing a kid to a park so they'll stop being super hyper. It's honestly what I do to myself. Just anything like that. And honestly, just being very aware of the media I consume. I tend to be, I love dramas. I love super serious things. When it comes to like TV shows like BoJack Horseman, my favorite TV show, understanding that like maybe I need to change those things and what I'm constantly, because there's just a lot. BoJack Horseman, for example, if you haven't watched it, we talk a lot about mental illness and heavily on substance use and people dying and all the gritty things of life. And so just being aware of stuff like that and being like, is this something I should be doing right now?
Like, is this soothing or is this activating?
Yes. And sometimes it's both. And that's when you realize maybe you just need to find something else to watch. So my thing is, I just said I'm very logical. I'm also very emotional. Like, I feel like I'm torn in two when it comes to stuff like that. So just feeling whatever I need to feel. That's like the biggest point of EMDR, so you can feel your body again and feel those emotions and just giving yourself time. Like, if you have the ability to give yourself alone time with no phone, no one, and just sit with yourself, like, it's hard, but that has helped the most.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm also wondering if you would share just a little bit about End Overdose and what they do.
Yeah. So End Overdose is a nonprofit based out of Los Angeles, California. But we also have essentially two headquarters. The other one is in Springdale, Arkansas. So overall, nationally, what we do is we do overdose prevention and response training and provide free naloxone or Narcan to anyone that wants it. In the state of Arkansas, you can get free shipping to your door anywhere that you live. As well as free fentanyl test strips if they're legal in your state, and we teach people how to use them. We teach people what an overdose looks like, how to respond to it. Just think it's so important to not just hand someone Narcan and then not tell them what to look for, because that can keep people from using it if they actually need it. So we do that. And in Arkansas specifically, we have a recovery resource map for every county in the state. So any nonprofit, any like food pantry, AA, NA, AA online, any treatment center if it's there for every single county. And we also have anti-stigma training for opioid use disorder, and then a understanding like signs and symptoms of opioid use disorder training. And we work a lot with colleges. So we're a lot more in-depth in Arkansas. We just have a lot of different grants here, but I'm in charge of the whole state. So basically what I do all day, every day is contacting lovely people like everyone at Recovery Demystified, or just regardless. It could be a bar, it could be a church, it could be a food pantry, and trying to get them trained. And we just do everything for free. Just our tagline is no one else has to die. So just understanding that all the people we have lost, it has been completely unnecessary. And like, if the general public had more knowledge about it, we could destigmatize it more and be prepared.
Yeah, thanks for all y'all do. It's been very cool being able to partner with you guys, because before it was like really, financially unsustainable and and difficult to try to find harm reduction supplies. And now it's like, yeah, it's just very... It's uplifting. Like the restaurant that I worked at, there's a lot of like college kids there, and they would be like, oh my God, I can just have this for free. And I'm like, fuck yeah, you can just have this for free. Do you know how to use it? And it's like, it feels great being able to just interact with the community in this way that's like free and uplifting and healthy. And yeah, it's like, no one else does have to die. It's fucking ridiculous. Like everyone should have naloxone. Everyone should know how to use it. I mean,
exactly. And making it approachable. That's the biggest thing we've heard from like people my age or college students of like, I don't feel awkward walking up to your table to get Narcan. Like you make it fun, you make it cool. Like we're at music festivals all the time, and just making it just more of a thing. Like it's not quite as revolutionary as it was a few years ago. And that's good. It should be normal. Yeah. Should be a first aid item, in my opinion.
Cool. Is there anything that we didn't get to that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I just want to throw out, I just love everything that y'all are doing. And if you've just watched the podcast or listened to the podcast and haven't done a deep dive, you should. And if you live in Northwest Arkansas, you should get in touch in any way you can, because I think Recovery Demystified is so important and it could have saved people in my life. And I just love everything about it. So thank you.
Thank you. Hell yeah. I mean, I also had too fucking many friends die, and my experience of not having the resources that I needed to recover led me to like spiraling way farther than I needed to and hurting a bunch of people. So it's really cool to be able to provide different diverse resources and hopefully prevent unnecessary suffering. So thank you. I usually end with the same two questions, and one is, what do you think people don't understand about addiction?
That nobody does their first drug or substance or anything like that expecting for the worst to happen. Yeah, kind of like with me, I was like, I'm not going to get addicted. That's most people's viewpoint. So just understanding like they didn't choose addiction at the end of the day. They chose the substance.
Yeah. Yeah. No one wakes up and is like, I'm going to become a heroin addict today. Like exactly. That will be really cool. Yeah. And then if you could speak to someone in the darkest days of their addiction, what would you say to them?
Reach out to people that love you and that you trust, because when you get vulnerable, people are a lot more receptive than you think they are. And if you don't have the answer and they don't have the answer, they might have someone who has something that can help you. So just reach out to the people around you, and it's terrifying. And honestly, this is pretty personal for me, so I would rather listen to your problems and try to help you solve them than attend your funeral. Agreed.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking with me today. It's been really nice to have you.
Yes, thank you. This has been fun.
All right. Ooh. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Recovery Demystified. If you like what you heard, share it with a friend or rate and review us so we can reach a larger audience. Recovery Demystified is produced and edited by me, Early Brunner. Stevie Petet made our logo. Our beautiful theme music is by Logan Bragg. And our social media manager is Kaylee Bausch. We are entirely supported by your generous donations as a 501c3 nonprofit. You can find a link to donate in the description. May you be happy and free, dear listener.